Born on February 1, 1947, Jessica Savage was just a girl from Wilmington, Delaware, a place far removed from the glitz and chaos of national television. She was the eldest daughter of Florence Goldberger, a Navy nurse, and David "Buddy" Savage, a clothing store owner. Her family was a rich tapestry of different cultures, with a mix of Slavic, Jewish, Italian, and Russian heritage that shaped her early sense of self. Life seemed stable, but that sense of security was shattered when Jessica was just 12. Her father, Buddy, suffered from nephritis, a painful and incurable kidney disease. On May 11, 1959, he passed away at only 33. The loss devastated the family, not just emotionally, but financially. Overnight, her world shifted. Her mother relocated the family to Margate City, New Jersey, hoping a fresh start would mend their broken lives. That move marked a new chapter for young Jessica, one that would put her on a path to a career she hadn't yet dreamed of. While most teenagers were busy with school dances and homework, Jessica was already dipping her toes into the broadcasting world. At Atlantic City High School, she co-hosted a rock show for teens on a local station. Her voice, a natural mix of charm and edge, quickly became a familiar sound on the airwaves. She moved from co-hosting to reading the news and spinning records, becoming the first female DJ in the Pleasantville area before she even turned 18. This wasn't just a teenage hobby. It was a testament to her relentless ambition. She was a trailblazer before the world even had a chance to notice. After high school, Jessica set her sights on Ithaca College in upstate New York, where she majored in communications. She was a natural from the start. She worked as an announcer at the college's TV station, sharpening her on-camera presence. Off campus, she landed a radio job, doing voiceovers for commercials and gaining a loyal following as a top 40 DJ known as Honeybee. Her voice had charm, her delivery had an edge, and she knew exactly how to capture attention. Even while juggling classes, Jessica had the hustle of a seasoned broadcaster. She graduated in 1968, but didn't leave her alma mater behind. In the years that followed, she'd often return to teach a mini course on TV news, inspiring other young women who, like her, dreamed of a seat behind the anchor desk. Jessica Savage's early years weren't just a build-up to fame. They were a testament to her relentless drive. She lost her father too young, broke into a male-dominated industry as a teenager, and carried herself like a star before the world even caught on. She was smart, driven, and magnetic. And for a time, she truly seemed untouchable. But as history would show, even the brightest stars can burn out too soon. But before the burnout, there was a time when Jessica was more successful than most of her contemporaries, and what she did next would change the course of her entire career. Back in 1969, Jessica Savage was just another young woman trying to break into a world that didn't know what to do with her yet. She had the ambition and the presence, but what she didn't have was professional experience. WCBS, the CBS radio flagship news station in New York City, brought her on as an administrative assistant, a behind-the-scenes job far from her dreams of being on air. She pushed for an on-air position, but WCBS turned her down flat. The reason? No professional experience. Most people might have accepted that and quietly stayed in the background. Not Jessica. With the blessing of news director Ede Joyce, she used the WCBS TV facilities to create a professional audition tape. This wasn't just a side project. It was a defiant act of self-belief. She mailed that tape to hundreds of stations across the country, chasing opportunity with a fierce determination. Out of all those tapes, fewer than a dozen stations even bothered to reply. Only one offered her an interview, KTRK-TV in Houston. Despite her lack of broadcast news experience, they took a gamble and hired her. She became the station's first-ever female reporter. The man who gave her that shot, station manager Dick John, later explained that it wasn't experience that sold him. It was her drive, her sharp copywriting, and her delivery. From the moment she walked into the KTRK newsroom, she stood out. She wasn't just the only female reporter. Aside from one secretary, she was the only woman in the department. Her colleagues, instead of writing her off, took her under their wing. KTRK wasn't unionized, which meant Jessica wasn't confined to a single role. She got her hands dirty, learning every part of the job from working the camera to editing footage, all while honing her skills in front of it. A few months in, she auditioned for a weekend anchor spot and got it. That moment was more than a promotion, it was a milestone. Jessica Savage had just become the first female news anchor in the South. Her anchoring style was polished, composed, and almost theatrical yet commanding. It quickly became her trademark. Her big break came when she covered a train derailment and fire. That story made it all the way to the national stage, airing on the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite. Jessica's career was officially on the map. In 1972, she made another leap, joining KYW-TV in Philadelphia. At the time, the station was an NBC affiliate and had just signed her on a 5-year deal as a general assignment reporter and weekend anchor. But things were different at KYW. This was a unionized shop, and her responsibilities were strictly limited to news reading and reporting. It was a frustrating limitation for someone used to working in every part of production. At the same time, KYW was under increasing pressure from the Philadelphia chapter of the National Organization for Women for failing to hire women in visible roles. So, when Jessica asked to break her contract to accept a job offer from CBS in New York, KYW said no. Instead, in a move partly designed to appease the pressure, they offered her a raise and bumped her up to the weeknight anchor desk. That decision paid off. Jessica started anchoring the noon broadcast and eventually became part of a powerhouse trio on the 11 p.m. news. Viewers couldn't get enough of her. One viewer described her delivery as magical, and others said they felt an emotional bond just watching her on screen. With her growing success came local fame. Men went out of their way to find reasons to meet her, and women copied her hairstyle. Jessica became more than just a news anchor. She was a local star. But while she appreciated the recognition, her sights were still set on something bigger, the national stage. And NBC was watching. But what they saw wasn't just a local star. It was a woman on the verge of making history. By 1977, Jessica Savage had already made waves in Philadelphia, but now it was time for the big leagues. That September, she officially joined NBC News as the weekend anchor for NBC Nightly News. It was a huge step, a coveted role at the national level, and a sign that her on-screen charisma had not gone unnoticed. But not everyone was convinced she deserved the spot. Critics quickly chimed in, claiming Jessica had been chosen more for her looks than her journalistic chops. They said she jumped the line, getting ahead of other reporters who'd spent years grinding in the trenches. NBC heard the rumblings and made a point to silence them. They didn't just put Jessica behind the anchor desk. They sent her into the field to prove she was more than just a pretty face. She was assigned as a correspondent, even covering Capitol Hill for a time as the U.S. Senate reporter. Despite the scrutiny, Jessica quietly made history. She became the second woman ever to anchor a weekend national newscast for NBC. The first, Catherine Mackin, had since left, leaving Jessica to carry the torch. And soon enough, she wasn't just covering weekends. She was stepping into primetime territory. Whenever anchors like John Chancellor or David Brinkley were off, Jessica filled in, making her the first woman ever to anchor the weeknight edition of NBC Nightly News. This was a big deal, not just for her, but for women across the country watching someone like them command the biggest news platform on TV. NBC also tapped into Jessica's star power in other creative ways. They gave her short nightly segments, NBC News Update, which aired between regular primetime shows. Each update lasted about a minute, but because they were slotted into primetime viewing hours, the audience numbers were massive. People didn't just tune in for the news, they tuned in for Jessica. Her voice also became familiar to radio listeners across the country through her work with the NBC Radio Network, where she often provided commentary. Jessica's versatility made her indispensable. She even substituted as anchor on both the Today and Tomorrow shows, showing her ability to shift between formats with ease. Viewers loved her, and so did network affiliates. She drew people in. In 1982, a TV Guide poll ranked her as the 4th most trusted news anchor in America, putting her above some of the biggest, most established male anchors of the time. Behind the scenes, she was something of a perfectionist. She worked constantly to refine her delivery, working with a voice coach and experimenting with different techniques to fine-tune her narration. That dedication paid off in one unforgettable moment. In November 1978, Congressman Leo Ryan and several others were taken out by members of the People's Temple in Guyana, moments before the mass suicide at Jonestown. NBC had footage of the attack, but no one had time to watch and script it before air. Jessica had to narrate the disturbing film live without rehearsal. She saw the footage for the first time along with the rest of the country, and yet her delivery was calm, composed, and professional. NBC executives later praised her for her ability to stay in control under such pressure. It was one of the most emotionally charged broadcasts of her career, and she handled it with remarkable grace. Jessica's reach continued to grow. In January 1983, she stepped into a new role on public television, becoming the first host of Frontline, a hard-hitting documentary series produced by PBS. It was a different kind of storytelling, deeper, more investigative, and more socially focused. It suited her. Jessica brought the same thoughtfulness to the role that viewers had come to expect from her. Her time on Frontline was brief but significant. Sadly, she never got the chance to see how far that new chapter might have gone. A love that left scars. To the millions who watched her anchor the news, Jessica was the picture of success. But what the public didn't see was the chaos behind the scenes that would ultimately unravel her. To the millions who watched her anchor the news, Jessica Savage was the picture of success. Sharp, stylish, and completely in control. But what the public didn't see was the chaos behind the scenes. Her personal life was a storm of heartbreak, secrets, and silent battles that never quite made it into the headlines during her lifetime. Jessica was married twice, and both marriages ended in tragedy. Her first in 1980 was to Melvin "Mel" Korn, a well-known advertising executive from Philadelphia. At first glance, the match seemed solid, but it didn't last. Just 11 months after they said, "I do," Korn filed for divorce, reportedly after discovering that Jessica had a serious dependence on cocaine. Only a few months later, Jessica entered into what would be the most heartbreaking relationship of her life. In March 1981, she married Dr. Donald Payne, her own gynecologist. It was a move that surprised many, but for Jessica, who had always craved emotional security, perhaps it felt like a fresh start. Unfortunately, Payne had demons of his own. He struggled with depression and substance abuse, and those issues quickly began to surface. Just 5 months after they married, Jessica came home to their townhouse in Washington, D.C., and found him unresponsive. He had offed himself by hanging. Jessica had been in New York at the time, and walking into that house to discover his body was a trauma she never spoke publicly about. Yet just 3 weeks later, she was back on the air at NBC, stoic, composed, and utterly unreadable. To the world, it looked like she'd recovered. Inside, she was unraveling. Romantic stability remained elusive. Jessica's most enduring relationship was with Ron Kershaw, a respected TV news executive known for his talent and his temper. Their connection was fiery and complicated, filled with passion but also marked by volatility. Kershaw, like others in Jessica's life, had his own issues. According to biographers, he also physically abused her. Their relationship was on and off for years, a roller coaster of highs and lows that left deep emotional scars. Jessica rarely spoke about the abuse, keeping the truth buried beneath layers of polish and professionalism. Before any of these men, back in the early 1970s when she was just getting started in New York, Jessica had been romantically involved with fellow journalist Ed Bradley, who would later become a 60 Minutes legend. Their romance eventually faded, but the respect didn't. According to Bradley, they remained close friends, both personally and professionally, until the day she passed. He never spoke poorly of her and always emphasized the warmth and connection they shared long after the romantic part had ended. But behind every relationship was the same undercurrent. Jessica was deeply guarded. According to her biographers, she was a perfectionist in every sense of the word. She demanded the best from herself on camera, in her writing, and in her delivery, but that constant pressure chipped away at her sense of self. She battled insecurities about her looks and her ability, even as millions of viewers admired her nightly. She suffered from social anxiety, often choosing solitude over socializing. The confident anchor people saw on television was often a carefully constructed mask, and what would happen next would bring that mask crashing down forever. By 1983, Jessica Savage was no longer the rising star at NBC. She was starting to feel like an afterthought. Despite her talent and commanding on-air presence, the network had begun shifting its attention toward newer faces, particularly Connie Chung. It was a painful shift for Savage, who had fought tooth and nail to get where she was. In June of that year, NBC quietly removed her from her regular Saturday evening anchor slot, the one she had held with pride, and handed it over to Chung. On top of that, Chung also accepted the early Today role that Savage had once been offered but turned down. Just like that, the spotlight was dimming. From that point on, Jessica's presence at NBC was limited to brief NBC News Digest segments, short, minute-long updates that ran during commercial breaks. For someone who had once been groomed as the network's next big star, it was a clear sign. Her career at NBC was on shaky ground, and she knew it. Friends noticed a change in her. Behind the camera, she was growing more anxious, withdrawn, and visibly on edge. There were whispers about her emotional state, though no one said anything outright. She kept showing up, but the sparkle, the fire that had once made her unstoppable, seemed to be fading. Then came October 3, 1983. It was just another NBC News Digest segment, or at least it was supposed to be. But when Savage appeared on screen that evening, something was clearly off. Her speech was slurred, her words tumbled awkwardly out of order, and instead of sticking to the teleprompter, she veered off script, ad-libbing parts of her report in a way that felt uncomfortable to watch. Something was wrong, and everyone could see it. Later that night, she returned for a second segment, and this time she delivered it smoothly. But the damage had already been done. That first shaky performance lit up newsroom gossip across the country. Speculation exploded. Was she on drugs? Was it her old habit of coke? Was she unraveling live on national television? Savage, however, had her explanation ready. She blamed the slip-up on a teleprompter malfunction, an easy scapegoat for a live broadcast gone wrong. Her agent stepped in to do damage control, claiming her slurred delivery was actually due to pain medication she was taking after undergoing facial reconstructive surgery following a boating accident. But by then, the rumors had taken on a life of their own. Behind the scenes, the whispers got louder. Some of her NBC colleagues claimed they had seen signs of substance use. Others weren't convinced. Close friends and coworkers pushed back against the narrative, insisting she didn't have a problem. But the truth seemed increasingly blurred, hidden somewhere between concern and reputation management. One of the few people who truly tried to help was NBC correspondent Linda Ellerby. She later revealed that she had gone to network executives and begged them to step in. "You have to do something," she told them. "This woman is in trouble." But instead of action, she got a chilling response. A network vice president reportedly told her, "We're afraid to do anything. We're afraid she'll KLL herself on our time." Still, some of her colleagues didn't give up. Ellerby and a few others tried to reach out, tried to pull Jessica back before things spiraled further, but whatever help they offered came too late. That same month, Jessica Savage was gone. Author Gwend Blair later wrote that Jessica's shaky on-air moment on October 3 had essentially ended her network career. But not everyone agreed with that version of events. People magazine, in a feature published after her death, offered a more hopeful narrative. According to their report, NBC had actually just renewed Savage's contract for another year. She was also reportedly set to return as a Sunday substitute anchor in January 1984 and had plans to continue with another season of Frontline. So, was her career really over, or was it just on pause, waiting for a comeback she'd never get the chance to make? We'll never know. But one thing's certain. By the time the cameras went dark, Jessica Savage had already become a cautionary tale about fame, pressure, and how quickly the news can turn on its own. And what happened next would be even more shocking. It was a rainy Sunday evening on October 23, 1983, when Jessica Savage walked into the cozy French restaurant, Chat Audit, in New Hope, Pennsylvania. She wasn't alone. Joining her that night was Martin Fishbein, a rising executive at the New York Post and someone she'd recently started dating. Things between them were still new but promising. That evening was meant to be quiet and simple, a nice dinner away from the pressure of television studios and newsrooms. Just two people sharing a meal, getting to know each other. But by night's end, tragedy would strike in a way no one could have imagined. Around 7:15 p.m., with the rain still coming down hard, Savage and Fishbein decided it was time to head home. Fishbein took the wheel of a leased Oldsmobile Cutlass cruiser, and Jessica climbed into the back seat, holding her loyal golden retriever, Chewy. The roads were slick, visibility was poor, and between the storm and the dim lighting, it was easy to miss a sign or a turn. And that's exactly what may have happened. Instead of exiting the restaurant's parking lot the right way, Fishbein mistakenly drove up a narrow tow path that ran alongside the old Delaware Canal. It was a dangerous path, not meant for cars, especially not in heavy rain. As the Oldsmobile edged too far to the left, the unthinkable happened. The car veered off the embankment and plunged about 15 feet into the shallow, murky canal below. The station wagon landed upside down in just 4 or 5 feet of water, but that was enough. Deep mud at the bottom of the canal swallowed the car's weight and sealed the doors shut. The water quickly began filling the vehicle. Inside, trapped and disoriented, Fishbein remained strapped in behind the wheel. In the back seat, Savage and her dog were equally helpless as the car sank into silence. It wasn't until nearly 4.5 hours later, around 11:30 p.m., that a local resident stumbled across the overturned wreck. By then, it was too late. Jessica Savage, once one of the most recognizable faces on American television, was gone at just 36 years old. So was Fishbein. His body was still belted in the front seat. Jessica and Chewy were found in the back. The Bucks County coroner would later rule that both Savage and Fishbein had died from asphyxiation by drowning. Toxicology reports revealed no presence of drugs in either of their systems, only trace amounts of alcohol, about half a glass of wine each. It wasn't recklessness or substance use that ended them. It was simply a tragic accident made worse by bad weather and poor visibility. In the months that followed, grief turned into a legal battle. Savage's family, along with close friends, filed a lawsuit against several parties they believed shared responsibility for her death. The New York Post, whose insurance covered the leased car Fishbein was driving, was one. So was Fishbein's estate, the Restaurant Shaw audit, and even the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania for alleged negligence regarding signage and road maintenance near the canal. The case eventually settled in 1988 for a staggering $8 million, which would translate to over $21 million today. Most of that money came from the Post. But out of that heartbreaking settlement came something meaningful. A portion of the funds was used to create scholarships in Jessica's name. Today, those scholarships support women pursuing careers in broadcasting and journalism at Ithaca College, Savage's alma mater, and other institutions. In life, Jessica Savage broke barriers for women in television news. In death, she continues to open doors. And though her final moments were unbearably tragic, her legacy still echoes in every woman who steps behind the news desk, microphone in hand, ready to tell the world a story. Do you think Jessica truly got justice for what happened to her, or do you think otherwise? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also click the next video shown on your screen to keep the story going.